Hello, and welcome to my beginner guide for Raging Bolt. This is meant for newer players who are maybe trying to pick up their first meta deck to go to their locals or their tournaments to kind of figure out the game a little bit better. Um, this is my overview of Raging Bolt, why you should play it. I'll explain some of the nuances of it, explain how the deck works, and why you should play the deck if you're new. So, what is Raging Bolt? Raging Bolt is a hyper aggressive and almost completely non punishing deck. So, it's hyper aggressive. It wants to go second every game, and it wants to get the knockout every single turn. You want to go 2-2-2. You have a big basic in your Raging Bolt. You just set him down and you swing with him. Very basic to understand. He's very non punishing. You draw through a lot of your deck. There's a lot of draw support in this archetype, so you're kind of seeing a lot of cards and going unpunished for not sequencing things correctly a lot of the times, which it can definitely help out new players a little bit. That being said, it is very beginner friendly because the lines are very easy to understand and the combos are like 3 to 4 card combos max, so you can kind of just pick up and play it. What I have listed on the screen is my current Raging Bolt list that I play. I've been playing the deck for about 4 months now, 3 months now. I've been playing it since Night Stitcher came out. I think that was the last card that really made Raging Bolt go over the top as a really good deck. That and Fezandipiti. So I've been playing it for a while, and I generally know what I'm talking about. I am prone to misplays, which is why this is kind of a deck that I've picked up, but I think I've generally gotten a whole lot better at it myself. So that's kind of my accolades for teaching. So why would you play this? Like I said, Raging Bolt is very forgiving. You don't have to necessarily sequence correctly, and it allows you to make some minor misplays and go relatively unpunished. There are situations where you do get punished for misplays, and at the end of the day, you do have to learn your sequence to make the odds as best as you can. But you're looking at like 13 cards a turn, so it's like if you're not fully correctly sequencing, you can sometimes get away with it. You can also, it's another reason to play this deck is because it has a very good spread into the current metagame. It has an incredible Dragapult matchup, and a really good Regidrago matchup. Regidrago being probably the best deck in the format right now. Notably good matchup against Lugia, and it has a pretty solid 50-50 into Charizard. Charizard, there's a lot of nuance in that matchup, so it can be kind of hard, but generally, it is pretty good. It kind of runs into a lot of issues with some of the more fringe meta picks. So Terapagos is a pretty hard matchup for it. Gardevoir has been popping up more and more, and it can really struggle against Gardevoir. Lost Box is a famously bad matchup for Raging Bolt, but those matchups kind of happen few and far between, so you're pretty okay. Raging Bolt also really is a gatekeeper deck. It will be in a lot of rogue decks. Why not to play and why people don't play it? This deck is very linear. It's very easy to just pick up, and there's less decisions to be made. And because of that, you get a lot less top player representation. Obviously, the deck is good enough to where some top players will still play it because it's like, sure, it may be a little bit more boring to play than Regidrago, but if it's consistent and it gets you your tournament wins, some people will value that. I also think this deck generally has issues where it can teach bad mechanics to players. Like I said before, if you're a new player, this deck won't punish you for missequencing sometimes, and so the counter argument to how easy it is that maybe you don't want to play it right away because it won't teach you how to sequence a lot of your card draw. And so you can kind of get away with making minor or even sometimes major mistakes, which is not necessarily the best for learning. So I'm going to now go over the deck profile. I've shown my deck list image for the first part of this video. I'm going to switch over to TCG Live now, and kind of go through the cards and what they do, and uh, their thought processes in the deck, and go over what I play and some of the alternatives. So, um, this is my Raging Bolt list, as we saw before, and we'll go over some of like the key elements of it. So, Raging Bolt, is your main attacker. Bellowing Thunder, you may discard any amount of basic energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 70 for each energy you discarded this way. And that's not from this Pokemon, it's from all of your Pokemon. Um, which this deck has a lot of energy acceleration, so you're getting a lot on the board, and then you're just swinging for big damage. It's very, very cookie cutter. One card that gets you all that energy on the board is this Teal Mask Ogerpon. Teal Mask Ogerpon is, if you have a grass energy in hand, you may attach it to this Pokemon and then draw a card. This does not count as your attach for turn, so this accelerates a lot of your energy on the board very quickly and lets you just stack that damage for Bellowing Thunder. There are a few other core cards that should be in almost every build. Radiant Greninja should be in every build of the deck. It allows you to discard your energy, which is very important for your item combos. Your energy hitting the discard allows you to accelerate it onto your Raging Bolts. And so Radiant Greninja kind of fills that niche while also giving you more draw support, getting you to just get more cards in your hand, find those combo pieces. Another card that discards and finds those combo pieces is the Squawkabilly. Squawk and Seize once during your first turn, so you can only use this during your first turn. You may discard your hand and then draw 6. So you can get that energy in the discard. You can kind of throw away those bad hands if it's a bad start. And you get to just restart. This allows you to just turbo through your deck as much as you can. It's a very important card. Fezandipiti, another essential in the deck. When your Pokemon gets knocked out, this Pokemon can then draw 3 cards. So you can put him down after you get knocked out, draw 3 cards, and just keep on turboing. Just you're looking to go through as much of the cards as you can. Slither Wing is the last card that I have in my deck. It is a 1 prize attacker, and that is its purpose. Burning Turbulence for 120 is a good attack. It hits a lot of important weaknesses in the format, namely Terapagos or Ursaluna. It can also one-shot all of the electric Pokemon, all the lightning Pokemon, so anything in Miraidon. It notably one-shots the Pikachu EX, even with its ability that allows it to survive on 10 HP. A very, very powerful card. Notably also knocks out Fezandipiti. So almost every deck in the format right now runs the Fezandipiti. So having the Slither Wing, it's very consistent. It's also important to have the 1 prizers in Raging Bolt because it allows you to offset the price trade. You're trying to go 2-2-2. But you are mostly running EXs, so your opponent is also trying to go 2-2-2. Slither Wing slows them down, forces them to have the gust, find more pieces, and just generally keep your momentum. There are a couple other 1 prizers of note. This is kind of the old guard 1 prizer that was used, the Sandy Shocks. Also a basic magnetic burst. If you have 33 or more energy in play, this attack does 70 more damage. So this was really good. It importantly knocks out Charmanders, so it can slow down Charizard if they only get out 1, or Comfeys and Lost Box, or any of those basics, Dreepies. Famously and importantly, does not knock out Ralts due to resistance. The attack is not affected by weakness, but it is affected by resistance. So most of Gardevoir actually avoids getting knocked out by Magnetic Burst. The other one, which is kind of less tested, is this new Koraidon with Unrelenting Onslaught. If one of your ancient Pokemon used an attack during your last turn, this attack does 150 more. Like the Slither Wing, it does a lot of damage with the weakness, a lot of important weakness. Notably doesn't kill the Pikachu because the Slither Wing Burning Turbulence adds the burn that this doesn't add. The other issue with this one is it's at 130 HP, so it can die to Dusknoir. And importantly, it cannot be your first attacker. Slither Wing, you can pop it up as your first attacker, swing an attack, and offset the prizes right away. You can't do that with the Koraidon. You need to swing with the Roaring Moon first. Now I'll go ahead and go to the trainers. I will start with the supporters and kind of the centerpiece of this deck, the Professor Sada's Vitality. Choose up to 2 each Pokemon and attach a basic energy from your discard pile to each of them. If you if you attach any energy this way, draw 3 cards. This card once again just helps you get through more of your deck, go through and do more options. But it also accelerates that energy, so you can get to that 2 energy requirement for Raging Bolt and Slither Wing in that first turn. So this deck, it wants to go second. It wants to play that Sada and get this first turn attack. It's very important. Next up is the boss's orders, usually used in later game, but it does give that gust effect that allows you to force up those 2 prizers, because once again, you need to go 2-2-2. You don't need to, but it increases your odds of winning drastically. The last supporter that I use, and this one is kind of contentious, is the Iono. Each player shuffles their hand and puts it onto the bottom of their deck, and then they draw based on how many prize cards they have left. It's really good for disrupting the other turbo decks. So if you're playing against another Raging Bolt, if you're playing against a Roaring Moon EX or a Ancient Box or a Lost Box, these decks that want to have these big card hands and hit these big combos, Iono is very good. And it can kind of flip that matchup sometimes, especially against like Lost Box and Ancient Box, which you take losing matchups to. Now we'll go ahead and get to the items. It's a lot of staples, but there are a few really important cards. Prime Catcher is the only A-Spec that you should run in this deck. There are others that have been tested before, but at the end of the day, Prime Catcher is the best A-Spec in Raging Bolt, probably the best A-Spec in the game. It's just so consistent. Being able to switch out your Pokemon and your opponents and choose, it's very valuable. Other notable inclusions are the Bravery Charms, plus 50 HP to any basic Pokemon it's attached to. It gives you a lot of sustainability into a few really important meta matchups. So Terapagos can't knock out Ogerpon. Ursaluna can't knock out a Raging Bolt. Dusknoir can't knock out a Radiant Greninja. A lot of those. There's a lot of little situations like that this Bravery Charm is very useful in. We also have the Pokégears in this deck to kind of search through aggressively and find these Professor Sadas. Very important that you get there. And so this card just makes it a little bit more consistent. This deck is a part of the PokéStop Night Stretcher combo, where you play this PokéStop to because it allows you to take all of your items, and as you see, you play a lot of trainer cards in this, so you're hitting pretty often off of PokéStop. But then you also discard anything that isn't an item. So your supporters, your tools, your Pokemon, your energy, or your stadiums. Night Stretcher gets back those basic Pokemon, or that basic energy, or a Pokemon. So you can PokéStop if you have your Night Stretcher in hand and kind of not be afraid of losing anything. The other thing that PokéStop does that is kind of like its hidden ability in this game is that it can help you get that discard on that energy. So if you're missing one energy in the discard so that you can Sada and then attach and then swing, PokéStop can sometimes get you there, especially in those early turns. As for the rest of the cards, they're mostly just staples. Palpad, you want to bring back your Sadas at some point in the game. Super Rod, I like this card, although it is one that people have cut before. I like it for late game consistency, trying to make sure that I don't run out of cards in my deck. This deck goes through really aggressively, and sometimes you want that Super Rod to try to confirm that you're not running out. Earthen Vessel, obviously you're finding those energy, also gives you discard potential, pretty important. Nest Ball is your ball search of choice, allowing you to find a basic and put it directly onto your bench. Switch Carts are your switch of choice in this deck. Everything you're running is a basic, so there's no reason to run Switch when you have the Switch Cart that also heals that 30 damage. 30 damage isn't always relevant, but it's better to have it than to not have it. Now, the last card on this list is this Pokemon catcher, and this card I like to call the win more card. Pokemon catcher is very volatile, flipping a coin. If heads, switch one of your opponent's bench to the active. So you get to choose. Very, it's very potentially good. I run 4 because the statistics of getting like you want, if you have 4, you are highly likely to hit one of them, and usually you only need to hit one because you have the Prime Catcher, you have the Boss's Orders. Um, Although a lot of people don't like this card, so I've seen people go down to 2 and add an extra Pokégear or an extra Night Stretcher, or they add in the trekking shoes. So trekking shoes allowing you to look at essentially up to 2 cards, extra cards per turn, is very good. Um, I don't think it does quite enough in this deck, so I don't like it for me personally. Um, but that's the Pokemon catcher. I think it is a very important card in the deck, which is why I run 4 of them. A lot of people only run 3. You could cut 3 and go +1 Night Stretcher. You could go +1 Pal Pad, +1 Pokégear. Energy Retrieval is the last card. It just gives you a little bit more consistency with finding those grass energy back so that you can keep on powering up those Ogerpon to keep on swinging. Energy count 336. You don't need a whole lot of energy in this deck, but you need, well, I guess 12 is a lot of energy, right? But you're not really, your attacks don't cost a lot of energy, but you need it to swing. So it's kind of an interesting, this energy count is pretty much solved. This is like the meta for Raging Bolt. Um and there's not a whole lot of reason to change. There are a couple other cards that are not core cards like everything else here, except for Super Rod. Super Rod is not necessarily core. That people have played that I would like to bring up here, namely Ultra Ball. Not necessarily a core card, but it helps you get those energy discards early if you need it. And also combos specifically well with Lumineon V. So Lumineon V allows you to search your deck for a supporter and put it in your hand. So those Ultra Balls, you need those so that, because it's only when you play it from your hand, so you can't Nest Ball for the Lumineon. But if you Ultra Ball for the Lumineon, then you get that free early game Sada, and then you're not digging as much. Very potentially good. I'm not a big fan of it. I think the deck looks at enough cards already, and it doesn't need it. So I don't personally play it. The other card that is kind of in contention is this Iron Bundle. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is on the bench, you may choose to discard it. If you do, your opponent chooses a bench Pokemon of theirs and promotes it to the active. So it gives that gust effect, but it's kind of an unreliable gust because your opponent gets to choose, and that can kind of leave you in situations where the bundle doesn't have a lot of value. The last thing that I wanted to bring up is this Crispin. Crispin, I've tested with it a little bit for like early game setup. If you can't find that Sada, having that one of Crispin can sometimes you can find that instead, and attach the energy that way to power up a Raging Bolt. The unfortunate part about Crispin is that you don't get the card draw, and the card draw is kind of what makes Sada as good as it is. So Crispin, not as good to me. If I wanted to play something like that, I would honestly rather just play an extra Pal Pad. That's kind of where my mindset with it is, or an extra Pokégear, because in most turns when you would want to play Crispin, you'd rather just play Sada. There are very few situations where that's not the case. So I will go ahead and get into a couple games and kind of show off this deck, show off what it can do. And we'll try to get 2 or 3 good games that and see some diversity, and I'll talk through my lines and how I think about this deck and how I play it. All right. So, like I said before, this deck wants to go second. Second is key. Um, so if you win the coin flip, I don't think there's a single matchup where you choose to go first. Quite honestly. That being said, I did lose the coin flip. My opponent will choose to go first, which kind of helps me. A lot of people on live tend to go first, so this is kind of a good live deck. And this is kind of a great hand. So you always start your Raging Bolts. Raging Bolt is your best starter. You never really want to get it out of the active. And it does seem like we are kind of playing against a rogue Charizard deck. So Charizard is a pretty volatile matchup. We'll see what we can do here. He does get the Buddy Buddy PAF in. So in my board state, the only thing that I could really ask for more is if I could find if I had an energy in hand, so that when I Squawk and Seize, I can guaranteed get it out. But the general line here is we're going to bench the Squawkabilly, we're going to bench the Ogerpon, and then we're going to Nest Ball for the Radiant Greninja. We're going to Pokemon Catcher and probably try to catch this Pidgey to shut down his draw supporter. Pidgeot is a famously good card, so we're going to try to shut it down before it gets too set up. And then we're going to Squawk and Seize and see what happens. Depending, of course, on the draw. If I draw Sada, maybe we don't Squawk and Seize. I do see the Earthen Vessel, though, which is extremely good. So we will go ahead and bench, and Nest Ball for the Radiant Greninja. And here, I'm actually very happy to go Earthen Vessel away the Pal Pad, because I'm not going to play it. And I'm going to grab one of each. Now, why I grab one of each is so that I can go manually attach. And then I can go, I want to play this Pokemon Catcher. I want to see if I can grab this draw supporter, which I do. So I can grab this Pidgey. Now, because of how I have this set up, I can Squawkabilly now and reliably start digging for Sada. It's also possible to go concealed cards here, which I think it lets you look at more cards, but it's kind of the risk reward, and I do think it is actually worth to go for it. And we do hit a grass, which lets us dig just a little bit more. And it is the Night Stretcher. So both these cards are getting discarded. I'm going to go ahead and play this Earthen Vessel and get just a little bit more energy in the discard. Probably just one fighting even, because this one fighting puts me at 2. And then we're pretty happy to just Squawk and Seize. We are looking for this Professor Sada. We're looking for the out to Professor Sada, and there it is. So we can go Nest Ball for the Raging Bolt. And then here we have Professor Sada's, which gives us the Lightning here and the Electric there. We get the +3 draw, which gives us another Ogerpon. And see, this is what I was talking about. This deck just goes through so much of this deck, of the deck to get to where it is. So, we start at 43 cards and I'm down to 28 in the first turn. It's very aggressive with how it draws. So, a very important thing to know in the Charizard versus Raging Bolt matchup is you want to keep one energy on your Ogerpon when you can. So, I am kind of happy here to go discarding the fighting off of the active Raging Bolt, and I can find it next turn. That is not an issue. But what this means is since I have 2 Ogerpon set up at this point, then no matter what he does, next turn I can find the attach and then knock out into a Charizard. Ogerpon with Myriad Leaf Shower Oko's the Charizards if they have full energy attached to them. He's going to Buddy Buddy, probably bringing back another Pidgey. Manaphy is not good for him. It is not relevant in this matchup at all. Gonna manually evolve up to the Charmeleon. If he doesn't find a rare candy in his Zard this turn, I'm very happy to Pokemon Catcher and try to grab this Charmeleon. I think that is my best line next turn. And he does not grab the rare candy unless he has the rare candy in hand. and he Ultra Balls for Charizard. We see the Deluxe Bomb, so we're not actually going to get too punished. So we are, in fact, going to probably be digging for our Prime Catcher or our Boss's Orders this next turn. And we'll see where we can get. I'm going to keep on loading up these Ogerpons. We do see the Ultra Ball probably for the Charizard. This guy may be kind of misplaying because he can't play the Charizard this turn. So we're gonna really aggressively try to find this Gust knockout on this Charmeleon. That is our goal here. With these Evo decks, it's kind of awkward since they don't always have two prizers out on the board to knock out. But what's important is that you're chasing out the energies and you're chasing out the evolutions as aggressively as you can. So right here, we're in a very interesting spot. I'm going to go ahead and drop the Pokemon Catcher first. Because if I can Sada this turn, that feels really good. And I do fail the Pokemon Catcher. That's kind of, at this point, what you expect to happen. I am okay to conceal cards here. And it does find me the Pokégear. Pokégear could get me to boss. But we will go ahead and Energy Retrieval and bring back both of these. Because we may be attaching for turn, or we'll probably be attaching for turn. And we're going to dig through just a little bit more. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to attach the the Bravery Charm, and we're going to Earthen Vessel away this fighting. We have the guarantee for it this next turn, but we're just trying to get as much out of the discard as we can. This also allows us to get 2 more Teal Dances out, but we're just trying to thin the deck up as much as we can so that we can make this boss as likely as possible. There's another Sada. And there's another Charm, which we will happily put on the other Ogerpon. And there's nothing else for us to do this turn, so we will go ahead and manually attach and hit the Pokégear. We're hoping to see this Boss's Orders, which we do indeed find. That's kind of what this deck is good at. It gives you exactly what you need, but we can boss up this Charmeleon, and we are still in a great spot where we can Bellowing Thunder. At this point, we are okay to discard 1 grass from each of these Ogerpon, because with Teal Dance and Attach, we get a guaranteed setup with 1 energy. So, knock out the Charmeleon. We're back onto even prizes. So, even if this person does find like rare candy off of top deck into Charizard, we're going relatively unpunished here. And our board state is very set up. So, if this turn we Sada, we're looking towards the turn after. Okay, they did indeed top deck that rare candy. That's pretty crazy. So, they will get this knockout on this Raging Bolt. That is a guarantee at this point. But they can importantly actually not knock out this Raging Bolt, nor can they knock out the Ogerpons. They are currently swinging for 240. Okay, so they do get the knockout on the Raging Bolt. I had my math a little bit wrong. So they can get this knockout here, but they can't knock out these Ogerpon because they're no longer weak because the Charizard is a Dark type. And I can swing for weakness. So if they get the knockout here, there's an argument to bring up an Ogerpon and start looking to swing with one of those. Potential to put out the PokéStop next turn, although I think it is generally better to not, since my opponent has no cards in hand, and he will only have 2 cards in his hand after prize draw. I think no matter what, we're going to Sada this turn. I think it is always the most consistent. However, the interesting situation is I don't think we're going to set up where I don't think we develop another Raging Bolt. I think it is more better for us to aggressively put down a Fezandipiti. And we will go ahead and flip the script first. We're looking for an Energy Retrieval or just a way to get this Ogerpon powered up. Okay, so we do not find it there. And we don't have a way to consistently get it another way. So we will go ahead and play this Sada now. attaching the lightning that we know that we had, and there it is, the energy retrieval. So we'll go ahead and play the energy retrieval for 2 grass, and we'll Teal Dance to the first one. And if we see another energy, we can Teal Dance to the second, but we don't. So that is fine. So we will go ahead and manually attach, and we will go ahead and get our knockout on this Charizard. 360 with Myriad Leaf Shower. Very relevant number, very important. And we get the 2 prizes. At this point, this game is pretty much wrapped up, and we've kind of seen how Raging Bolt takes the aggressive stance and never lets up. I've never really been too pressured to stop keeping up the aggression. Even now, I don't. This Moltres can't ever knock me out. But I can, in fact, knock it out with my Ogerpon. That being said, Deluxe Bomb makes me less interested in that. I think what we do here is we will go ahead and Prime Catcher and bring up this Pidgeotto. Once again, this is his main draw supporter, so we're trying to shut him down as much as humanly possible. Okay, and he does concede off of that. No Charizard, or no Charmanders on board, no draw supporter. A very dominant game. So that's kind of how Raging Bolt works. Where there were maybe a couple misplays that game, but generally the lines were clean, and we got through everything that we needed to. So we'll probably play one more game here and kind of see, to just get a little bit more showcase and kind of explain the thought process. I will also be putting the deck list in the description of this video so that you guys can copy and play with it. But also, you can tweak it around a little bit and work with it. Got my words kind of mixed up there. And make it your own. Obviously, this deck list it's like 57 out of the 60 cards are almost guaranteed what they should be. However, there is a lot of variability in it, so make it your own. Do what you like with it. This is how I have built the deck. So Slither Wing Start is pretty unfortunate here. But the benefit of Slither Wing Start is we do have the Nest Ball, and we do have the Earthen Vessel, which means we can Earthen Vessel for the fighting energy, attach it, and then Nest Ball for the Squawkabilly, and they put down the Rotom, which is very beneficial for us, because if they put down another Charmander, which I expect they will, yes they do, that gives us a very solid target. Pidgey is a good target too, shutting down their draw support, but shutting down the Rotom gives me the 2 prizes, gets me farther ahead. So that is kind of what we're looking for this turn. Minus Palpad again is pretty unfortunate, but it's part of the situation. What we can do, however, is Earthen Vessel away the boss's orders right away. Grab the 2 fighting, only 2 in the deck, so that's important to note. We will go ahead and manually attach for turn. Nest Ball for the Squawkabilly. Squawkabilly in play. I will go ahead and put the Bravery Charm on the Slither Wing. Bravery Charm on Slither Wing lets it swing twice. It is very consistent for that. We'll Palpad back the boss, trying to get as much value out of these cards before we get rid of them. Earthen Vessel away here is pretty solid, and we can grab a Lightning. Probably not 2. 2 is pretty aggressive here, but 1 gives us a double attach off of Asada if we find the pieces off of Squawkensies. So we're kind of relying on Squawkensies here to give us a good hand, and that is unfortunately not really what you want to see. What it does let us do is we can go ahead and put down this Raging Bolt, and I will put the Charm on the Raging Bolt. We've already attached for turn. This is a pretty unfortunate hand, but I think it is okay to There's a couple lines here. But I like keeping the Slither Wing up in the active, forcing him to find the Gus next turn. He doesn't want to play Gus, he wants to play Arvid, so we'll just go ahead and stomp off and discard the one. Obviously I could have passed there, but there's no reason not to just stomp off. Like, it gets you a little bit more value. The other line would have been to bring up the Raging Bolt and kind of tank a hit. But with the Duskull down, if he finds double rare candy into Dusknoir and Charizard next turn, then I'm kind of going punished for that. Not having a single Ogerpon developed is quite unfortunate. We'll probably see kind of a losing game here. We're going to have to be pretty particular. But we'll see what we can do for sure. Squawk and Seize, sometimes the Squawkabilly doesn't help you out as much as you wish it would, but it's pretty necessary in these situations that you go for those plays. It's statistically the best to just go through as much of your deck as possible. That it's kind of an anomaly that I squawked into maybe a worse hand than I started with. He does find the double rare candy, which we kind of knew. We kind of know it's going to happen. But importantly, we know that he has already played his supporter, which means we're not getting bossed or Ionoed. But we will go ahead and get knocked out here. The only possible worst case scenario is if he has the counter catcher in hand. He's already used his Pidgeot, actually. Yeah, so we are kind of in a great spot. Doesn't even get the knockout on the Slither Wing, so we're still pretty far ahead. Find the Pokemon catcher, which is interesting. Pokemon catcher lets me kind of aggressively chase out this Rotom, which I think is what I want to do. So we'll see if we can hit this Pokemon catcher. If we do, we'll bring up this Rotom. Okay. And we will get ahead in the prize race. It's kind of still an unfortunate situation to be in. Oh, we actually don't have any fighting left. So that's a really unfortunate. This is a pretty bad game, honestly. 3 energy in the discard, guaranteed. We'll go ahead and bench and stomp off, I think. Once again, see if we can hit. A Thornton is pretty good to hit, honestly. 3 rare candies have already been played. If he has the ability to get out the 4th, it's unfortunate. But not finding that last fighting is really rough. Fortunately, we do get the Fezandipiti developed, which means next turn we can get that flip the script draw. And we're going to see what we can do to try and get this game back to even. But it is kind of difficult. We're going to see a quick search. This may be a quick search for a knockout into this. Okay, that's really good. That means unless he has the energy attached this turn, this is going to be a pass here, an instant charge. Which would be kind of good. It's a little unfortunate. We're still kind of in the top deck zone. Does have the Arven, so we will probably see Ultra Ball for Dusclops here, would be my guess. Ultra Ball for Dusclops allows him to knock out the Slither Wing and force up a 2-prizer. But it's kind of not good for him as well. So we'll see kind of where this goes. If I were him, I probably wouldn't take this knockout. I passed. He doesn't instant charge. Very good for us. And we do find our Radiant Greninja, so maybe we can get something going here with the concealed cards. Concealed cards into the Professor Sadas is massive. We can go ahead and get this Burning Turbulence. We're going to get this first knockout, and we will trade. But I think we're okay. Get the draw there. Bench the Ogerpon, and we're able to start developing this. It forces him to see the threat there and kind of decide who he wants to attack next turn. But we do get this knockout. We knock ourselves out as well. which is unfortunate, but we have the Switch Cart, which means what is the best play here, unfortunately, it's kind of a risky play, is to bring up this Radiant Greninja. And we do find that last fighting. That's incredibly useful. We bring up this Greninja, and we say that he will not find the Gust. He almost guaranteed has it because he has the Pidgeot. But if he wants any more, then he has to play kind of aggressively here. He can go Rare Candy into Dusknoir, knockout Radiant Greninja, force up a 2-prizer, but in which case it's guaranteed just a Squawkabilly, and I'm not really losing that much value. He does take a 3-prize turn, which puts him back on 2 to win. It's an unfortunate spot for sure. Collapse Stadium is very good for me, actually. I think what we're looking for here is... Okay, so he does not take the 3-prize turn. Did not quite play that turn correctly. A little bit of a misplay from him. I think what we do here is we go ahead and bring up this Raging Bolt. It's a guaranteed play this turn. And we do have the Earthen Vessel, so we will go ahead and play that. Discarding probably the Switch Cart here. And we'll go ahead and we'll grab the grass and even consider grabbing 2. Because we will go ahead and Nest Ball for another Ogerpon, put it on the board, and we're going to get aggressive with these Teal dances. I think what we're looking for here is we're looking for knockout on this Charizard as well as an Iono. We're not looking to Sada this turn. This is a very interesting board state where we don't want that. So we'll go ahead and do as much as we can. We will get rid of this Collapse Stadium for the PokéStop, and we'll flip the PokéStop. Hope not to see this Sada or this Iono here. We don't. That thins out the deck just a little bit more, which means we can flip the script and hit the Pokégear, and we don't find it, but we do find the Professor Sadas, which does allow us to get to a better board state at the very least. We can Sadas, bring back a fighting, and an electric here is fine. And we do find another electric. And we can go ahead and take this knockout. It's unfortunate he has a massive hand, so we could get quite a bit punished, but we'll go ahead and discard 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, and then 5. There. 5 for the knockout. And we keep our Ogerpon set up, which means we're more resistant to Charizard plays next turn. And we find a grass and the Iono, which was sadly in the prizes. And it does look like he's going to set up for a knockout through Charizard this turn, which I assume he has in hand. The other thing, though, is he has a massive hand. It's very likely that he does not have the energy in his deck. It's not likely, but it's possible. So 3 energy in the discard already. We could see a situation where he doesn't have his energy in hand, or in deck, because it's all in hand. There should be 4 left. Okay, there is the Super Rod, so we're going to confirm. That is the correct play. But we will see this Evo into the Charizard this turn. Yep. And Charizard does swing for knockout at this point in the game, but no Duskull has been played, which means we're kind of less threatened. I think if I were in this Charizard situation, it is better to take the knockout on... actually, it's kind of a checkmate board state. He wanted to put out that Radzard first. Radzard gets him into this game, but unfortunately, with no Prime Catcher played either, I'm kind of in a good board state where... So we kind of, that game, got to see the swing where, like, I started off bad, but without having any major misplays, this deck is just consistent and it gets you there. It's very good at that. So I believe I do have the game wrapped up at this point. No matter what he does, I have return KO unless I get Iono'd. He could play an Iono here, which would be detrimental. But I'm also gonna look through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards. No Iono played. There's the Iono played. It's kind of all a matter of time. Pretty likely. 3 Professor Satos played. So we will get knocked out here, but we will look at minimum 6 cards next turn. And all that we need is one of our outs to energy. So we have a few ways to get there. TCG Live does seem to be a little bit bugged right now, which is unfortunate. We'll go ahead and bring up the Ogerpon. We don't know necessarily what we're attacking with yet, but Ogerpon feels fine here. Go ahead and hit the PokéStop first. No Sada is unfortunate, but what we do get to do is we saw both of those retrievals hit the bottom of the deck off of the Iono, so we can go Nest Ball and grab. It doesn't really matter. We're just trying to thin out our deck a little bit here. So next up is, interestingly, a Pokégear. We want to see if we can thin out a little bit more. We don't. And then we just gotta flip the script, and it kind of all comes down to Fezandipiti. All right, well, we got another kind of a chance here. We'll go ahead and hit the Teal Dance. If we Teal Dance into an energy, a grass energy, that's great. If not, we can Pokégear, maybe hit Iono, and we could try to Iono into the grass, and that's kind of where we're at. We're at the top deck zone. This was a slow start, but Raging Bolt can get there sometimes. We'll see. Quite a few cards, including that Energy Retrieval, gets me out. So Energy Retrieval, get to the 1, and we get our manual attach, and then we have the swing for knockout. Guy's mad. I was not completely unrealistic that I get there. But that's kind of the power of the deck. It was a bad start. It was weak hands for a while, but we found our way into the game, even with bad prizes and a weak start. So I hope that this kind of helps you learn Raging Bolt, kind of learn some of the lines and some of the thought processes, and I hope it influences some people to play this deck. I truly think this deck is really fun to play, and it's great to learn the game with. And it will be very effective for new players. So thank you all for watching, and have a good day.